Book 3, Chapter 13, continuing with verse 14. Therefore, know these 5 elements are the developed Brahma himself, as he evolved them in the beginning, and he is their producer for the creation of the world, he being the prime cause of their production. There is nothing that exists without him, and the world is no product of itself. The unreal appears as real, just like a city is seen in a dream, and like a castle built in the air by our hopes. In the same way, we place the individual soul in ourselves, which has its foundation in the empty Spirit of God. Thus, the brilliant Spirit, situated in the divine intellect, having no earthly or any other material substance, is called the individual soul and remains in emptiness, like a luminous body rising in the sky. Hear now how this empty individual soul, after its detachment as a spark from the totality of vital spirits, comes to be embodied in the human body within the empty sphere of divine consciousness. At first, the soul thinks it is like a minute particle of light, that it considers itself to be growing in the sphere of its consciousness. The unreal appearing real, in the end, proves to be unreal. Just like an imaginary moon becomes nothing, so the soul continues to see itself subjectively and objectively, both as the viewer and the view. Thus, the single self becomes double, just as one sees his own death in a dream. Thus, it waxes into bigness and thinks its vital spark is a star. This is the form of the lingadeha within the body, the sentient soul, the subtle or astral body. As the soul continues to think of itself as a microcosm of the universe, Vishvarupa, it falsely thinks of itself to be within such a reality. A thought expressed by Soham, so I am. By thinking of himself this way, a man comes to believe it to be true. Just like one believes himself to be a traveler in his dream. So, by thinking the soul as a star light body, he views it so within himself. By continually thinking about this soul this way, he loses his external sensations and views this star in his head. He sees the soul within himself as though it exists without him. just like a mirror reflects the distant hill in itself. He sees the soul confined within him like a body stuck in a well, and like a sound is confined in the hollow of a cave. Consciousness of our dreams and desires is an attribute of the individual soul whose real form is that of a star, keeping watch within us. Now this empty life, composed of the essence of the mind and understanding and knowledge, resides in the hollow sheath of the star. It appears to me to take flight to the sky in order to see what is passing there. Then it enters the body by two holes, which later are named the external organs of sight. The organs by which the embodied individual soul is to see are called the eyes. That by which it feels is called the skin. Those whereby it hears are the ears. The organs of smell is the nose, and that which conducts flavor to the spirit. The sense of taste is the tongue. Then there is breathing air, the breath of life, which moves the energies of the organs of action. It is this air which is the cause of vision and the mover of the internal organs of mind and thought. Vital breath supports the body and the all-supporting soul in the emptiness of the body, and fills and kindles it like air kindles a spark of fire. The word jiva, or the individual soul, has a figurative meaning. Something real in the unreal body. Hence, Brahma is said to be the life and soul of the unreal world. The gross embodied soul is the form of emptiness like the mind. Yet, it imagines itself to reside in an egg-shaped space inside the body, as Brahma is supposed to be seated in the cosmic egg. Some view the Spirit of God as floating on the surface of the waters in the form of Narayana. Others view it in the person of the Lord of Creatures, Pashupati, Shiva. There are others who look at the Spirit of God as infused throughout the creation in the figure of Viraj, the primordial man. These are called the subtle and gross bodies of the soul, Sukshma and Stula Sharira. The soul or spirit is the spacious womb of production. It is the means of executing its own purposes and of knowing the proper time and place. It is the article and the manner of action. The mind is the inventor of words, expressive of ideas in the soul, and subjects itself to the arbitrary sounds of its own invention. Hence, in this world of errors, God is falsely said to be embodied in the words Shabda Brahma, the Brahma of speech of Mimamsa philosophy. The unproduced and self-born Brahma that has risen of itself and represents the mind is as unreal as a man dreaming he is flying in the sky. This all-supporting and embodied soul is the creator Lord of creatures, who is said to have formed the illusory frame of the world. But in reality, nothing was formed or born, nor is there any substance to be found in the world. It is the still and same empty form of Brahma, whose essence is known to extend as the infinite space itself. Things that appear to be real are as unreal as an imaginary city. They present a variety of forms and colors to the fancy, but have not been built or painted by anybody. Nothing that is unmade or unthought of can be real. And the gods, Brahma and others, being freed from their business at the universal dissolution of existence, could neither resume their functions to make or have materials with which to make. The self-born Brahma, having neither memory of the past nor any material with which to work, would not be able either to form an ideal or to make anything material. Therefore, Brahma producing anything and any formation of the universe is not possible, are both impossible. The earth and all existence are the external ideas of the divine mind. They appear to us to be objects in a dream that is our waking state. The divine spirit is known only as an emptiness. Therefore, the world must also be emptiness, because like produces like. So all waters are liquid, though they are made to pass under different names. This creation is everywhere the same in the Supreme Spirit. It is only an evolution of the same, and the Creator is always and everywhere unchanging in his nature. The empty universe, under the name of the cosmic egg, shines as clearly as the divine spirit. It is calm in its appearance and becomes disturbed by causes born in itself. It is supported by the unsupported supporter of all, who is one and without a second, but devoid of unity and creation. All this is born in his consciousness, and therefore there is nothing new that is produced. He who is of the form of unlimited space, without any emptiness in it, who is transparent yet teeming with abundance, and who is the whole world without any worldliness in him, truly underlies everything. He who is neither the container nor the contained, nor the appearance of the world, who is neither the world nor its creator, and about whom there can be no dispute or disputant, is truly the unknown God. He who is neither the passing world nor any of its passing thing, who is quite at rest yet situated in all things, whether moving or quiescent, is the only Brahma that shines of himself in himself. The idea of the fluidity of water allows our minds to form an image of a whirlpool. In the same way, the sight of the world produces the false notion of its reality in the mind. All realities become extinct at the end, as we see the death of our frail bodies in dreams. The essential part of our soul remains unsheathed because of its own nature of indestructibility in the form of everlasting consciousness in the atmosphere of our intellect. Brahma, the Lord of creatures, is ever manifest by himself in the form of emptiness, in the Supreme Spirit. He, being of a spiritual form, like a mind, has no material body formed of earth or any other material. Therefore, he is both real and unborn. Chapter 14. No individual souls, only one Brahma. Each is Brahma. Brahma creates the rules and delegates. In this manner, the visible world, I, you, and all other things are nothing. Being unmade and unborn, they are non-existent. It is only the Supreme Spirit that exists of itself. The primeval empty soul first is awakened by itself, by its own energy from its quietness, then begins to have emotion in itself, like the troubled waters of the deep. Then it begins to reflect in itself, like in a dream or imagination, without changing its empty form, like a rock with an inner faculty of thought. The body of the great Viraj, God Viraj, untainted, is also devoid of any material form, whether earthly or any other elemental shape. It is purely a spiritual, intellectual, and ethereal form, transparent as the ether itself. It is without decay, steady like a rock, and as airy as a city seen in a dream. It is inert, as the line of a regiment painted in a picture. All other souls are like pictures of dolls and puppets, painted and not engraved on the body of Viraj, like a huge pillar. He, standing in as an uncarved column in the empty sphere of Brahma, represents all souls, but not bodies, as they are mere pictures on it. The prime Lord of creatures is said to be self-born. He is known as the uncreated Brahma for want of his prior acts to cause his birth. The primeval patriarchs, progenitors, who obtained their ultimate liberation at the final dissolution of the world, have no antecedent cause to be reborn as unliberated mortals. Brahma, who is the reflector of all souls, is within himself invisible in the inward mirror of other souls. He is neither the view nor the viewer, and neither the creation nor the creator himself. Therefore, although Brahma has nothing that can be described and has nothing that may be affirmed or denied about him, yet he is the soul of everything that can be described. He is the source of these chains of living being, just as light is the cause of a line of lighted lamps in illuminations. The will of the gods, Brahma and Viraj, proceeding from the volition of Brahma, is of the same spiritual nature as the other. Just as one dream arising in another is equally as insubstantial as the first. Hence, all individual souls evolve from the breathing of the Supreme Spirit are of the same nature as their origin, because there is nothing else that could cause or contribute towards cause. Lack of a secondary agency produces the equality of effects and their causes. Hence, the uniformity of created things proves wholly false any conceptions of their creation by a secondary cause. Brahma himself is the prime soul of Viraj and is identical with him. And Viraj is the soul of creation and identical with it. He is the empty vitality of all, and it is from him that the unreal earth and other things have their rise. Viraj is the Spirit of God diffused in nature. Ram said, "Tell me whether the individual soul is a limited thing or an unlimited mass of life. Or does the unbounded Spirit of God exist in the shape of a mountainous heap of individual souls? Are these individual souls like showers of rain falling from above, or like the drizzling drops of waves in the vast ocean of creation, or like the sparks of fire struck out of a red-hot iron? From where do they flow, and to whom? By whom are they emitted? Sage, tell me the truth. concerning the perfusion of individual souls. Though I have a partial knowledge of it, I require your more complete and clear explanation. Vashishta replied, there is only one individual soul of the universe, so you cannot call it a multitude. Therefore, your question is quite out of place. Like your question about the horns of rabbits. There are no detached individual souls, O Lord, nor are they found in multitudes anywhere, nor was there a mountainous heap of souls known to have existed at any time. Jiva, the individual soul, is only a fictitious word with many more fictions heaped upon it, all of which, as you must know for certain, do not apply to the soul. There is only one pure and immaculate Brahman, who is mere consciousness, Chinmatra, and all-pervasive. He assumes himself all attributes by his mighty power. Here, Brahma is represented not only as omniscient and omnipotent, but also as Saguna, with attributes, by his assumption of all attributes. Many regard the individual soul as evolving itself from consciousness into the many visible and invisible forms, Marta Mutam, just like a plant is seen to develop itself into its fruits and flowers. They add the attributes of the living principle, understanding, action, motion, mind, and unity and duality to the soul as if these were appertain to its nature. But all this is caused by ignorance, while right understanding assigns them to Brahman. The ignorant are bewildered by their different views of the soul, and they will not be awakened to sense. These different believers are lost in their various views, like light is lost under darkness. They will never come to the knowledge of truth. Know that Brahma himself is the individual soul, without any divisibility or distinction. He is without beginning or end. He is omnipotent and is of the form of the great consciousness which forms his essence. His lack of minuteness, his fullness, in all places precludes the ability to give him any distinctive name. Whatever attributes are given to him are all to be understood to mean Brahma himself. The Ram asks, how is it, O Holy One, that the totality of the individual souls in the world is guided by the will of one universal soul that governs the whole and to which all others are subject. Vashishta replied, Brahma, the great individual soul and omnipotent power, remained from eternity with his will to create without partition or alteration of himself. Whatever is wished by that great soul comes to take place immediately. The wish it first formed in its unity became a positive duality at last. Then its wish to be many became separate existence afterwards. All these dualities of his self-divided powers, the different individual souls, had their several routines of action allotted to them, such as this for that, meaning this being is for that duty and such action is for such end. Thus, though there can be no act without effort, by the general rule, as in the case of mortals, yet the predominant will of Brahma is always prevailing without effort to action. Though living beings affect their purposes by exertion of their energies, yet they can effect nothing without acting according to the law appointed by the predominant power. If the law of the predominant power is effective to attain an end, then the exertions of the subordinate powers, individual souls, to that end must also be successful. Thus, Brahma alone is the great individual soul that exists forever and without end, and these millions of living beings in the world are nothing other than agents of the divine energies. It is with a consciousness of the intellectual soul, the inner knowledge of God within themselves, that all individual souls are born in this world. But losing that consciousness, their knowledge of God afterwards, they become alienated from Him. Hence, men of inferior souls should pursue the course of conduct led by superior souls in order to regain their spiritual life. Atma Jivatma. Just like copper becomes transformed into gold by chemical processes. Thus, the whole body of living beings that had been as non-existent as air before comes into existence and rises resplendent with wonderful intellect. Whoever perceives this wonderful intellect in his mind then gets a body and the consciousness of his egoism. is said to be an embodied individual soul. The mind, gratified with intellectual delights, becomes as expanded as the intellect itself, and thinks those pleasures constitute the sum total of worldly enjoyments. Consciousness is said to remain unchanged in all its succeeding stages. And although it never changes from that state, yet it awakes, develops by a power intrinsic in itself. The uninterrupted activity of consciousness indulges itself in the amusement of manifesting phenomena in the form of the world. The extent of the intellectual faculty is wider and more rarefied than the surrounding air. Yet it perceives its distinct egoism by itself and of its own nature. Its knowledge of self springs of itself, in itself, like water in a fountain. It perceives itself, its ego, to be only an atom amidst endless worlds. It also perceives itself, the beautiful and wonderful world, which is amazing to understanding, and which thereafter is named the universe. Now Rama, our egoism, being only a conception of the intellect, is a mere fiction, kalpana. The elementary principles, being only creatures of egoism, they are also fictions of the intellect. Again, the individual soul, being only a result of our acts and desires. You have to renounce these causes in order to get rid of your knowledge of I and you. And then, after discarding the fictions of the real and unreal, you attain to the knowledge of the true one. As the sky looks as clear as before, after the shadows of clouds are dispersed from it, so the soul, after its overshadowing fictions have been removed, looks as bright as it existed at first in consciousness. The universe is a vacuum, and the world is a name for the field of our exertions. This emptiness is the abode of the gods, Vishva and Viraj, both of whom are formless. The wonderful frame of plastic nature is only a form of the formless consciousness and nothing else. One's nature never leaves him at any time. How then can a form or figure be given to the formless divinity? Divine intellect is exempt from all the names and forms given to unintelligent worldly things, it pervading and enlivening all the shines in the world. Intellect or consciousness is the power of understanding. The mind, understanding, and egoism, with the 5 elements, hills, skies, and all other things that compose and support the world, are made of essences proceeding from consciousness. The intellect, gathering information, contains all things. Know that the world is the mind, chitta, of the consciousness, chit, of God, because mind does not exist without the world. If the world did not exist, that would prove that the mind and consciousness, which consist of the world, do not exist. Therefore, the intelligent world is identical to the mind and the intellect of God. The intellect, like the pepper seed, possesses an exquisite property within itself. Like the flavor of pepper, the intellect has the element of the individual soul, which is the element of animated nature. As the mind exerts its power and assumes its sense of egoism, it derives the principle of the individual soul from the intellect, which, with its breath of life and action, is afterwards called a living being. The mind is what thinks, moves, and acts. Consciousness, chit, exhibiting itself as the mind, chitta, bears the name of the purpose it has to accomplish, which, being temporary and changeable, is different from consciousness and a non-existence. The distinction of actor and act does not consist in consciousness, it being eternal. Neither is consciousness the author or the work itself, which is, but the individual soul, which is active and productive of acts, is called Purusha, the embodied soul residing in the body. It is the action which makes a man Purusha, from which is derived his manhood, Arusha. Life, with the action of the mind, constitutes the mind of man. The mind, taking a sensitive form, enjoys the sense to their different functions. He, the consciousness, whose radiant light is the cause of infinite blessings to the world, is both the author and the workmanship from all eternity. There is none beside him. Hence, the ego or individual soul, in its essence, is indivisible, uninflammable, and incapable of being soiled or dried. It is the everlasting and infinite, and as unmovable as a mountain.